Welcome to the Jersey Barrier, where we love highways and we hate New Jersey. My name is Jeremy, and today we're going to be talking about Interstate 81 from Roanoke to Harrisburg. This is what we will see a lot of on the route. There is a lot of trucks on 81 and like to stay in the left lane. They like to go slow, and this is what it's going to look like basically anywhere on 81 that you drive. As we talked about last time, 81 goes from just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, all the way to the Canadian border, just north of Watertown, New York. Today we're going to start at the 581 junction in Roanoke, Virginia, and as you can see, we do get 81 North Lexington, which makes a little bit of sense because it's an interstate junction and it's an independent city, which Virginia really likes to sign. However, Stanton is also an independent city. It is bigger, and it's a splitting point between 64 and 81, and so that way you have a little bit more of a bigger place instead of Lexington, which is not really a useful interstate junction. On our first mileage sign, we have Natural Bridge, Lexington, and Winchester? Winchester is not a great sign because it is pretty comparable in size to Stanton, and Stanton is about 100 miles closer than Winchester, and so I think Stanton should definitely be on the bottom line here. And at our random interchanges, we do get Lexington, which is fine on the minor junctions to have a secondary. At our junction with 64 on its western end of the concurrency, we get 64 West Charleston and 64 East 81 North Winchester. No mention of Richmond as 64's control city. And on our mileage signs on 64 and 81, we get kind of a cool sign. We get Stanton, Harrisburg, and Winchester, kind of really all secondary type places here. And we don't get any mention of Richmond or Charlottesville for 64. It's all of 81's control cities. And on more minor junctions, we do get Stanton northbound and Lexington southbound, which is fine for secondaries. And on another mileage sign, we get Stanton as our secondary, Winchester as our primary, and Richmond as our primary for 64, which I think is a pretty decent sign. Now, at this point, I think it should be Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and it should be Harrisburg on the bottom line instead of Winchester, and Stanton on the top line. And I like how it says he loves you this much. You know, you can tell you're in the rural areas of Virginia. And at our eastern end of the 64 split, we get Winchester and Richmond. Now on our minor junctions, we get Stanton southbound and Winchester northbound. And on our mileage sign again, we get Harrisburg, Strasburg, and Winchester. I don't like Strasburg as a secondary. I know it's a decent splitting point, but it's like 8,000 people. It's not that big. And after Harrisburg, we get Newmarket, Strasburg, and Winchester. So Strasburg is the secondary. They're not messing around with it. At this point, it should probably be Strasburg, Winchester, and Harrisburg. And now we get our junction with 81 and 66, which 81 north is Winchester and 66 east Front Royal and Washington. And here we are, 8 miles to Winchester, 29 to Martinsburg, and 51 to Hagerstown. It seems like they're just doing a lot of secondaries here, but below Winchester. It's kind of a weird sign, but we'll roll with it. I love this mileage sign. We get Martinsburg, Hagerstown, and Harrisburg. Martinsburg in West Virginia, Hagerstown in Maryland, and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania for a mileage sign in Virginia, which I think it is the only mileage sign anywhere ever to have 3 different states in a 4th state. Pretty cool. Welcome to West Virginia. Boom, that is a welcome sign right there. That might be the best welcome sign in the country, in my opinion. And now we get a little bit of a provincial look for West Virginia. They have Martinsburg as our secondary and Hagerstown as our primary. Hagerstown at a nice 32 miles away. And on minor junctions, we get 81 North Martinsburg, which on the minor junctions is fine to sign a secondary. I think Martinsburg is a great secondary. And in Martinsburg, we do get our secondary for Hagerstown. This is reflected in the mileage sign where we get Route 11, Hagerstown MD, and Harrisburg PA on the sign. I like how West Virginia uses states for anything that is out of state. I actually don't mind that. It's pretty good unless you're talking about Chicago or New York or Indianapolis or something big like that. I think having these smaller cities with an out-of-state abbreviation creates a lot less confusion for out-of-state drivers. And here is our last speed limit 70 sign on the entire stretch of 81 north of this point. Once we cross into Maryland, there will not be any more 70 speed limits for the rest of 81 to the north. And welcome to Maryland. We also cross the Potomac River here, which is pretty cool because it feels kind of like we're in the DC area, even though we are not even really that close. And in Maryland, we get 81 North Harrisburg, which is a great sign. And I would even be fine with Hagerstown here, but Harrisburg is the primary. That is a good one. And we don't have enough room in Maryland to actually get mileage signs. The exits are too close together, but as you can tell, 81 North is signed for Hagerstown and Harrisburg, even though 70 is the kind of the reason for Hagerstown to be signed. But now we have 70 for we won't talk about it in this video. And welcome to Pennsylvania. I wonder if we will have good control cities here. And northbound we have Chambersburg, which is a fine secondary. So as long as it's the secondary, we should be fine, right? Okay then. We have Chambersburg on the top line, that's fine, and Carlisle on the bottom line. Carlisle is a suburb of Harrisburg. It should definitely be Harrisburg here. And now in Chambersburg, we get Hagerstown and Carlisle, which is fine for a secondary. And then we get Shippensburg and Carlisle. I just don't get the whole Carlisle thing. It should definitely be Harrisburg on the bottom line. And I really think PA should be doing 3 lines on the sign anyway. So this should be Shippensburg, Carlisle, Harrisburg. After Shippensburg, we do get Carlisle and Harrisburg. And now finally we are assigned at a minor junction north for Harrisburg because they put a pole right in front of the sign telling you where you're going. I feel like that's pretty, I feel like they don't take Harrisburg too seriously in their own state, the state capital. And now we get East US 22 for Harrisburg. And we will take 22. But let's look at downtown Harrisburg as seen from State Street, which is very cool. You have the kind of some pillars and the state capitol right between them. We will turn around and go southbound on 81. First we get 81 South Carlisle, which is fine going this direction, I think, because of Carlisle being kind of a suburb and an interstate junction, and you don't meet anything huge for now. And 81 North for Hazleton and Allentown. We'll talk about that in the next one. And in Carlisle at the 76 junction, we will get 81 South Chambersburg, which is a great sign. I think it should be Chambersburg, at least for now, because the next options are not great options. And we get Newville and Chambersburg. This is a fine sign. And then we get Chambersburg and Hagerstown, which I do not agree with. Actually, at this point, I think is when they should switch to signing for Roanoke. They should sign for Chambersburg and Roanoke. That would be a good sign for PA. We get 81 South Hagerstown in Chambersburg for our secondary. That is fine. But we get Hagerstown on the bottom line. And I think this is a joke. It should be Hagerstown and Roanoke. Throw Roanoke at the bottom of this sign here. Come on, PA. And welcome back to Maryland. Maybe we'll get good signage again. And we do. Surprisingly, we get 81 South for Roanoke. And this is even a minor junction that they're signing 81 for Roanoke. Not just Hagerstown they're signing it for, but they're signing it straight for Roanoke. So we know that all of the junctions in Maryland will be signed for Roanoke, which is awesome. And welcome back to West Virginia. Wild and wonderful, and we get 3 lanes, which is awesome. We don't get that very often. But in West Virginia, we do get signed for South Martinsburg. We see that Martinsburg is our secondary-ish, and Winchester is on the bottom line. I don't agree with this. I definitely think it should be Martinsburg and Roanoke. And then we get 81 South Winchester, which as a secondary is fine again. And now we get Inwood for our top line. Never heard of that, but that's fine. Winchester, VA on our middle line for 17 miles away. And now we get Roanoke as our bottom line, our ultimate control city from 193 miles away. So that is pretty awesome for West Virginia there. I didn't even know this sign existed, and I've driven 81 quite a few times. So this is pretty cool, West Virginia. And welcome back to Virginia. We will be spending the rest of our time here, and it'll be a long time, so buckle up. And now we get 81 South Winchester, so they kind of take Winchester seriously in both directions. They will sign it on the minor junctions here. But we are not very far from Winchester as we cross into Virginia, because we only have 9 miles until Winchester, and then Strasburg and Roanoke. I think it should definitely be not Strasburg on the second line. It should definitely be Harrisburg. And after that, we get 81 South Roanoke. So we know that we get either good secondaries or good primaries on the minor junctions for the rest of the way through Virginia. And on the mileage signs, we get a great mileage sign. We get Strasburg on the top line, Harrisburg on the middle line, and Roanoke as the primary control. That is awesome. And at 66, we get Front Royal in Washington and 81 South Roanoke. So no complaints for me there. And just look at this view. I mean, this is pretty incredible stuff. You just see the Blue Ridge Mountains right in the distance. And then we get Stanton, Lexington, and Roanoke. I think Stanton should be on the middle line there, but they're putting 2 secondaries there. This is right after Harrisburg. And now we get 64 West, 81 South, Lexington, and Roanoke, and 64 East, Richmond. I don't agree with Lexington on there. It should be Roanoke, and I think actually it should be Beckley instead of Charleston. Beckley is surprisingly big. It also has a metro area. It is a interstate junction, and Beckley is not as far as Charleston is. And now we get Lexington, Roanoke, and Charleston. I think it should be Beckley on the bottom line here, but those top 2 lines are perfectly fine. And now we get our sign for 81 South Roanoke and 64 West Lexington, which is right next to us basically, and Charleston, which I think should be Beckley. We get Natural Bridge, Roanoke, and a premature signing of Bristol. And I don't agree with Bristol as a control city already, and I definitely don't think it should be signed before Roanoke. That is just terrible. So provincial by Virginia. Just sign Roanoke. It's your biggest city in Western Virginia. Come on. And now on the next sign, we do get Roanoke on the top line now, and Salem on the middle line, and Bristol at the bottom line. I really don't agree with this. Salem is actually a mile closer than Roanoke is. I looked it up because it seemed a little close, but Salem is closer, yet it's on the middle line as the same distance. I don't think this should be Roanoke, Salem, Bristol. It should be Roanoke on the bottom line, and maybe if you want to put 581 on the middle line and some next exit on the top line, that's fine. Or just put 2 lines, 581 and Roanoke, but none of the rest of these need to be on here. It's just too early for that. And Bristol doesn't need to be on here at all. And we get our interchange for 581 for Airport and Roanoke. And if you look in the bottom left corner, you'll notice we get a little sign for Amtrak. See the 460 video for that. And that'll conclude our trip on 81, or at least for this section. And we will talk about what was signed by VDOT, MDOT, WIVDOT, and PennDOT. So I will not read all of this, but if you would like to pause and see what was signed, there you go. And here's what I would do. I would sign 81 North for Stanton, with Lexington being a secondary. I would then sign Harrisburg right away. Right from Lexington, I would sign Harrisburg the whole rest of the way. Use Richmond during the 64 concurrency, and then use Stanton and Harrisonburg as your secondaries. And then once 64 leaves, just sign it for Harrisburg. Harrisonburg being a secondary, Winchester, Martinsburg, Hagerstown, Chambersburg, and Carlisle all being secondaries. And then southbound, they should start with Carlisle, then Chambersburg, and then right after Shippensburg, they should change it over to Roanoke, with having secondaries of Chambersburg, Hagerstown, Martinsburg, Winchester, Harrisonburg, Stanton, and Beckley for the 64 split, and then Lexington for the actual split. And that wraps up this stretch of I-81. I will see you guys on the next time. Make sure to subscribe. There will be a video on the side that you probably have not watched yet, so be sure to check it out. And I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.